Imagine a world where the freedom and security you cherish are hanging by a thread. A moment in history when humanity faced its darkest hours and the fate of nations rested on the edge of a knife. This is the story of World War II, a conflict so vast and deadly it reshaped the globe and the very essence of human nature. Prepare to be transported back to a time where the world was at war and the future of humanity was uncertain. Part 1. The Prelude to Global Conflict. To understand the roots of World War II, we must first travel back to the aftermath of the First World War. Imagine a world still reeling from the scars of a conflict so brutal it was called the War to End All Wars. But instead of peace, the seeds of a future war were being sown, deeply embedded in the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty, intended to ensure peace, placed heavy burdens on Germany. It was stripped of territory, saddled with crippling reparations, and its military was severely restricted. These terms were meant to prevent future aggression, but instead fostered resentment and economic despair within Germany. Now picture a world grappling with the Great Depression. In the early 1930s, economies worldwide collapsed, unemployment soared, and despair was widespread. This economic desperation created fertile ground for radical ideologies to take root. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his National Socialist Party promised to restore national pride, rebuild the economy, and reclaim lost territories. The desperation of the German people paved the way for his rise to power in 1933. Hitler's vision for Germany was one of expansion and domination, directly challenging the post-war order established in Versailles. But Germany wasn't alone in its ambitions. Japan sought to extend its empire across Asia, and Italy, under Mussolini, aimed to create a new Roman Empire in the Mediterranean. These powers, driven by a desire for expansion and resources, set the stage for conflict. Meanwhile, the world's powers, Britain, France, and the United States, were focused inward, dealing with their economic struggles and the scars of the previous war. This lack of immediate response to aggression allowed tensions to simmer and grow. The stage was set, a world divided and hurt, nations hungry for power and resources, and a collective failure to preserve peace. The main cause of World War II was not just a single event, but a series of interconnected factors: harsh peace treaties, economic desperation, and the rise of totalitarian regimes. Together, they created a powder keg that only needed a spark to ignite. The world was close to starting a huge fight again, because of what a few people wanted. Stick with us as we show you how these problems turned into a big war that changed the world. It was like a bomb about to go off. Part 2. The spark ignites. It was September 1st, 1939, when Germany, under Adolf Hitler, launched a blitzkrieg, a lightning war, into Poland. This bold move was the final straw. Imagine the shock and horror as the world woke up to news of the invasion. Poland, caught off guard and outmatched, was the first victim of Germany's expansionist ambition. This aggression could not be ignored. Britain and France, standing by their commitments to Poland, declared war on Germany just 2 days later, on September 3, 1939. Yet, despite this declaration, a period known as the Phony War began, where little fighting occurred on the Western Front. But make no mistake, the gears of war were turning, and the silence was merely the calm before the storm. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, under a secret pact with Germany, invaded Poland from the east, sealing Poland's fate. Across the ocean, the United States watched with concern, choosing to remain neutral for now, emphasizing their desire to avoid entanglement in another European conflict. But Europe wasn't the only stage for war. Far to the east, Japan's expansionist moves in China and beyond were setting the stage for a wider conflict that would soon involve nations across the globe, from the deserts of Africa to the islands of the Pacific. In these early days of the war, as armies mobilized and alliances were tested, the world braced for the impact. The declaration of World War II had set in motion a conflict of unprecedented scale. What followed would be years of relentless struggle, heroism, and heartbreak. As battles rage and alliances form, the true global nature of World War II begins to unfold. Join us next as we dive into the pivotal moments that defined the early years of the conflict. The world was at war, and nothing would ever be the same again. Part 3. The early years of the war. As the shadow of war spread across Europe, the years 1939 to 1940 marked a period of rapid and dramatic events that would forever alter the course of history. This was a time of innovation, desperation, and bold strategies, setting the stage for the battles that would define the early years of World War II. The war, now in full swing, saw Germany pushing its advantage. Using blitzkrieg tactics, they aimed to quickly overwhelm their enemies with speed and surprise. But it wasn't just the battlefields of Europe that were alive with the sounds of war. The conflict had a global reach, affecting lives and nations far beyond the immediate combat zones. One of the most pivotal battles during this time was the Battle of France. Imagine the disbelief and shock as German forces bypassed the heavily fortified Maginot Line, invading through the Ardennes forest, a move considered impossible by Allied commanders. In a matter of weeks, from May to June 1940, Germany's swift and decisive actions led to the fall of Paris and the capitulation of France. The speed of the German advance was unprecedented. Utilizing a combination of air power and fast-moving ground forces, they encircled and trapped the Allied armies. The world watched in horror as one of its most storied cities fell under Nazi control, and the French government was forced to sign an armistice, marking a significant Axis victory. Yet, amidst this stunning defeat, a glimmer of hope emerged during the dramatic evacuation at Dunkirk. In a display of resilience and unity, over 330,000 Allied soldiers were rescued from the beaches and harbors, ferried back to Britain by a fleet of naval and civilian vessels in what was dubbed the Miracle of Dunkirk. This operation symbolized the unwavering spirit of the Allies, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The fall of France sent shockwaves around the world. It reshaped the strategic landscape of the war and forced nations to reconsider their positions and alliances. Britain now stood alone against the Axis powers in Europe, marking the beginning of a period of intense aerial combat known as the Battle of Britain. The years 1939 to 1940 were a testament to the unpredictability of war. Strategies, courage, and the will to persevere shaped these early days, setting the stage for the long struggle ahead. As the battles raged on fronts across the globe, a hidden horror unfolded behind the lines. Next, we venture into the dark heart of the war, the German concentration camps, where humanity faced its greatest test. Brace yourself for a sobering journey into the shadows of World War II. Part 4. The Shadows of War, Concentration Camps. Amidst the cacophony of war, a silent tragedy unfolded, hidden from the eyes of the world. The German concentration camps, a network of despair and darkness, became the sites of unimaginable horror. Here, we delve into why they were built and the atrocities committed within their walls. In the grip of Hitler's regime, the Nazis sought to purify German society of those they deemed undesirable: Jews, Romani people, political dissidents, homosexuals, disabled individuals, and many others were targeted in a twisted agenda of racial cleansing and ideological conformity. The concentration camps were the chilling instruments of this policy, designed to incarcerate, terrorize, and annihilate millions. Imagine being torn from your home, stripped of your dignity, and forced into a crowded barbed wire enclosure where the value of human life was reduced to nothing. The camps were places of brutal labor, starvation, disease, and execution. Daily roll calls, inhumane experiments, and gas chambers became the harrowing norms for countless innocent lives caught in the Nazis' merciless grasp. Upon arrival, families were torn apart. A selection process determined who was sent immediately to the gas chambers and who would labor until they could no longer stand. These camps, including the infamous Auschwitz, Birkenau, and Treblinka, symbolized the depth of Nazi cruelty and the destructive madness of their ideological zeal. But even in the darkest corners of these camps, the human spirit fought to survive. Stories of resistance, of secret schools and religious services, of art and music crafted in defiance of despair, remind us of resilience in the face of absolute evil. The liberation of these camps by Allied forces revealed the full extent of the Nazi atrocities to the world. The survivors, those who emerged from the shadow of death, bore witness to the horrors, ensuring that the memories of the victims would never be forgotten. The concentration camps stand as a stark reminder of the cost of hatred and the paramount importance of human dignity and rights. Stepping out from the darkest chapters of history, we turn our focus to the battlefields where technology changed how wars were fought. Next, we dive into the world of tanks, planes, and guns that were key in World War II. Get ready to see how these powerful tools helped shape the fight. Part 5. The Tools of War. As the war raged across continents, it wasn't just the soldiers' bravery that determined the outcome of battles. It was also the incredible machines and weapons they wielded. Let's journey into the heart of the battlefield to explore the machinery and strategies that were pivotal in World War II. On the ground, the soldiers' main tools were their firearms. The bolt-action rifle was common among troops, with the American M1 Garand, the German Mauser K98, and the British Lee Enfield being key players. But as the war progressed, semi-automatic and automatic weapons like the Thompson submachine gun and the German MP40 brought new firepower to the fight. Tanks, the steel beasts of the battlefield, played a crucial role. The German Panzer, a name that struck fear in the Herz of the Allies, was met with the robust T-34 from the Soviet Union and the versatile Sherman tank from the United States. These armored giants clashed in battles that could turn the tide of the war, with strategies evolving as each side tried to outmaneuver and outgun the other. Above the battlefield, the war took to the skies. Fighter planes like the sleek British Spitfire, the formidable German Messerschmitt Bf 109, and the agile American P-51 Mustang dominated dogfights. Bombers, including the American B-17 Flying Fortress and the British Lancaster, carried out devastating raids on enemy positions and cities, a strategy aimed at crippling the opposition's ability to wage war. The strategies employed by the armies were as varied as the landscapes they fought over. Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, saw the Germans combining fast-moving tanks, troop carriers, and air support to break through enemy lines quickly. The Allies, learning and adapting, developed their own counter-strategies, including the use of radar for early warning of attacks and the formation of armored divisions capable of taking and holding ground. This era of warfare was also marked by significant technological advances. The introduction of radar, the breaking of codes, and the development of new communication tools changed how wars were fought and won. These innovations allowed for more coordinated and effective responses to enemy movements, proving that brains were just as important as brawn. The battlefields of World War II were a testing ground for new technologies and tactics. The weapons, tanks, and planes used were not just tools of destruction, but were instrumental in shaping the strategies that determined the course of the war. As we've seen, the progression of the war was driven by a relentless push for innovation, where victory often hinged on having the upper hand in firepower and ingenuity. As the gears of innovation turned, the war entered a critical phase between 1940 and 1943. Up next, we'll witness the shifting tides of battle, where courage met catastrophe and the world's fate hung in balance. Part 6. The Turning Tides from 1940 to 1943. Between 1940 and 1943, World War II escalated into a truly global conflict, with battles raging across continents and oceans. These years were marked by dramatic swings in fortune for the Axis and Allied powers, each pushing towards victory against seemingly insurmountable odds. In 1940, the war in the skies over Britain raged on. The Battle of Britain saw the Royal Air Force defend the United Kingdom against the German Luftwaffe's relentless bombing campaigns. This victory was a crucial turning point, proving Hitler's forces could be stopped. Meanwhile, the Blitz sought to crush British spirit through bombing raids on civilian targets, and the Battle of the Atlantic intensified as German U-boats targeted Allied shipping, attempting to cut off supply lines across the Atlantic. 1941 was a year of bold moves and brutal fighting. The largest military operation in history, Operation Barbarossa, was launched as Hitler's forces invaded the Soviet Union, aiming to crush Stalin's army. The sheer scale of the conflict on the Eastern Front was unprecedented, with millions of soldiers clashing in battles that would decide the fate of nations. The war took a global turn on December 7, 1941, when Japan attacked the American naval base at Pearl Harbor. Overnight, the United States was thrust into the conflict, opening up vast new fronts in the Pacific, North Africa, and Europe, as they joined forces with the Allies. In North Africa, British and Axis forces vied for control, with the Desert War peaking in battles like El Alamein, where Allied forces under Montgomery began to turn the tide against Rommel's Afrika Korps. Simultaneously, in the vast expanses of the Pacific, American and Japanese forces fought fiercely for control of strategic islands, each inch of ground gained or lost, soaked in the blood of valiant soldiers. As 1942 rolled into 1943, the war witnessed pivotal battles that would significantly influence its outcome. The Battle of Stalingrad became the epitome of Soviet resilience, marking a decisive defeat for Germany as the city turned into a graveyard for the Sixth Army. Meanwhile, the Battle of Midway saw the United States Navy deliver a crushing blow to the Japanese fleet, shifting the balance of naval power in the Pacific. The stage is set for a final showdown, as the titans of the war, Germany and Russia, prepare for a clash that will echo through history. Who will emerge victorious in this ultimate test of strategy and willpower? Part 7. The Final Showdown, Russia versus Germany. As World War II approached its climax, the eyes of the world turned to the Eastern Front, where the final and most decisive battles would unfold between Germany and Russia. This was not just a clash of armies, but a battle of survival, ideology, and sheer willpower. Germany, once seemingly invincible with its blitzkrieg tactics, faced a resilient and determined Soviet Union. The tide of the war began to turn in favor of Russia, not just because of their unwavering spirit, but due to strategic missteps by Germany, brutal winter conditions, and the sheer size of the Soviet forces. The turning point came with the Battle of Stalingrad, a brutal confrontation where every street and ruin became a battleground. The city, reduced to rubble, became the symbol of Soviet resistance. After months of fierce fighting, the encircled German Sixth Army was forced to surrender. This victory marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany on the Eastern Front. Why did Russia win? The answer lies in their overwhelming numbers, the strategic brilliance of their commanders, and the severe underestimation of their resolve by the Germans. The Soviet Union mobilized millions of men and women, equipped with tanks, planes, and the indomitable Katyusha rockets, pushing the Germans back with a series of counter-offensives. Following their victories, the Soviet forces continued their relentless push westward, liberating territories occupied by the Germans. The Red Army's advance towards Berlin signaled the impending doom of Hitler's Reich. The once mighty German war machine crumbled under the weight of Soviet determination and resourcefulness. The collapse of the Eastern Front was a catastrophe for Germany, hastening the end of the war. In 1945, as Russian troops entered Berlin, the heart of Nazi Germany, the final act of the war played out. Hitler's suicide marked the end of the Nazi regime, and shortly after, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The victory of the Soviet Union over Germany was not just a military triumph. It was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit against tyranny. The end of World War II brought about a new world order, with the Soviet Union emerging as a superpower. But the cost was staggering, with millions of lives lost and the landscape of Europe changed forever. The last part, Declaration of Peace. And so the world's deadliest conflict came to an end. The guns fell silent and nations began the long journey towards peace. After years of destruction and loss, the Declaration of Peace was a moment of relief and hope for millions around the globe. As we close this chapter on World War II, we honor the memory of those who fought, those who resisted, and those who endured. Their sacrifices paved the way for the peace and freedom we cherish today. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history. Like, comment, subscribe, and remember, the past is the key to understanding our present and shaping our future. Until next time.